It's me, your average bear. I decided to do something a little different today. A, because I'm still procrastinating on that whole Hell Blaster unit video thing. But I had a question that I didn't get it resolved very well. So I was painting some bases, and I wasn't sure how to get the flocking on there. You know, do I need a kind of special glue? So I did some research. I went online, Reddit, videos, you name it. And I heard a number of recommendations, and every one of those was absolutely sure, from having done this for, 75 years straight, like that's all I did, it was sure that their method was the one that worked. So what do you do when you have very confident recommendations from people you don't know? Well, the first thing that comes to mind is you just pick one, right? And so I picked one based off of what I had available. I had some wood glue available from a different project, so I thought I'd use that, water it down a little bit. It went on the bases, and it looked fine. But I wasn't sure if I could have done better. So I thought, why not test it, right? The answer isn't out there on the internet, at least that I was able to find in like the 30 minutes I looked. I know, extensive research, that's what it looks like. But in the time that I spent, I couldn't find the answer. And so I've spent a lot of time, many years now, of relying on strangers to provide information to questions that I have, and put them up on the internet and never get paid for that. So I thought, hey, maybe it's my turn to pay it forward. So that's what I'm doing in this video. I am going to test a couple of different techniques to see how they work. Well, okay, so not techniques, products. And not name brand products. I'm talking like, this stuff. This is like flocking glue, and you get it at your local hobby store right next to the bags of like fake gravel and fake rocks and fake grass and fake all kinds of stuff. And then I'm gonna test this guy, right? Because this is what almost everyone said on the forums. They said this is what they use. So I got a couple more things, including super glue, which I thought was super weird, but that response kept coming up over and over. So I thought, you know what, it's time to test it. And that's exactly what we're doing here. I'm testing 4 different types of glue on 2 types of primer. So the idea is when you're going to flock something, you have a base, you've primed it, maybe you've put a little paint on it, whatever. So that's a total of 8 different bases. And each of them have something slightly different. I'm going to do everything else the same. So what varies is going to be, you know what, let me show you. So here's the deal. We're going to do science, crafting style. And one of the first things you learn about in science courses is that it's not science unless you wrote it down. So I'm going to write it down. Basically what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So I want to see the differences in, sorry, I need my reading glasses. So primer, base. We have 2 conditions here. We have condition 1 is Citadel color, black. What is that? Chaos black, sorry. Condition 2 is Army Painter. Again, black. Flat. I think these are both actually flat, but that's, whatever. And then the adhesive type. Here we have 4 conditions. 1, we have super glue, Yeah, I thought that was strange too, but it was on the internet, so why would anyone just go on the internet like that and lie, right? So there's got to be something to it. So the super glue, there was Elmer's glue. Now this is the brand name that everyone kept talking about, but people said it didn't really matter. It was PVA. I'm not sure what PVA means, but basically it's that glue that kids use in school. And then here they said with some water. Now the dilutions of this type of glue vary from 25% water all the way to like 50-50. Some dude used like 3 parts water to 1 part glue. I'm not going to test the strength, the dilution, the concentration of the glue. I'm just going to go with these three things. If we need more clarity, then we can kind of do a follow-up video with the different concentrations. So Elmer's glue, wood glue. Now, I'm not including this one because it was popular. I'm including it because I saw it once, and that's the glue I happened to have when I did these. So that's the one I did, right? And it turned out okay. So it was in there, and then with some H2O, I think I used, it was less than half, but we'll check it out. And finally, we'll go flocking glue. Now, I don't actually know what this is called, but I picked it up along with the flocking. They were in the same place. And so then when I went to go flock these bases, I was like, oh man, I can't use this because I don't want to cover the whole base. I just want to cover a little piece of it. I need to brush it on. So in my mind, I didn't have any actual flocking glue. So I went with the wood glue. What I didn't consider is that you could open this up and brush it on like all the other glues. So there's that. So for each of these, I'm going to brush it on. For this one, I'm not going to brush it on because I'm absolutely positive the brush is just going to dissolve in the super glue. Instead, I'm going to use like a toothpick, or you know what? I'll use one of these. It's a bamboo wood thing I use for painting purposes. So I'll cut off a little piece and use that to spread my super glue with. And we'll go like so. All right. So we've got the experimental design, and as it just so happens, I have the primed bases. So up behind, so this is what it looks like. This is the painted surface. This is what it looks like underneath. So I've coated these so I don't lose track of what's what. The AP here, AP stands for Army Painter SG Super Glue, Army Painter Wood Glue, Army Painter Flocking Glue, Army Painter Elmer's glue, and then the same thing with Citadel color. We've got the super glue, we've got the wood glue, we've got the flocking glue, and finally, but not least, we have the Citadel color Elmer's glue. So for each one of these combinations, we have a base. In other words, back in stats class, we used to call this a full factorial. So we have, experimental design is, we have Citadel, and we have Army Painter, and then we have super glue, we have wood glue, we have Elmer's glue, and we have flocking glue. So if I box these up, this is what we would call a full factorial. In other words, it's every possible combination. So if I go down Citadel, do I have an Elmer's glue? Yes. If I have army painter, do I have wood glue? Yes. And so the results would probably go in a place like this. Although in my case, I don't know if I'm going to get that advanced, because what we have to decide is, what do we think is good? Like, how do we decide, once we paint these and add the flocking, how do we decide whether it worked well? And so we want to be able to rank those without knowing what's underneath here. So once I start working with them, I'm not going to flip them over. So let's see here. Let's try how about spreadability? So the extent to which we can take that glue. Oh, where'd my brush go? Oh, there they are. So to what extent, how easy is it for me to take that glue and spread it? And I'm just going to do half of it. I'm going to apply it to half of the base, just so we can see the edge, right? So how about that? We do edge quality. So basically, how sharp, right? So I'm going to put the brush in there, and I'm sorry, I'm going to add the glue. I'm going to put the flocking on it, and so how sharp is that line? Right, because sometimes you want it to be kind of detailed, right? Because maybe there's a rock, or maybe there's a Space Marine boot there. You don't want to get the Space Marine boot all flocky. You don't want to flock up your boot, as it may be. 3 is we'll do base adhesion, and finally we'll do we'll do flock adhesion. And finally, just overall look. So these are going to be subjective, I know. But we're going to try to score them on these 5 things. So for each one of these 5, I'm going to have one of these. So there's a bunch of them, right? And I'm just going to give them a what is it? A subjective score between 1 to 5, where 1 is just the worst, 5 is the best. Okay, so that's the idea. Let's get to painting, shall we? I love the idea that we're going to do some miniature painting, and we're going to do some science. What a world we live in. What a world. All right, I just want to point out that this is the flocking we're going to use. It's some generic stuff from my local craft store. One of the two that, yeah, it's from my local craft store. It's supposed to represent grass. It's got a nice consistency to it. But so that's what I'm going to use. So we're going to start with, this is wood glue. Before we start, I just want to kind of would like for you guys to see this. I'm going to put all the Citadel together. Army Painter, Citadel, Citadel, and Army Painter. Okay, so there are my bases. I'm going to flip them over because I've primed both of them already. And I'm having this kind of internal fight with myself about how happy I am with Citadel versus Army Painter. And so I'm kind of hoping to get my light source kind of evenly here. So this is one type of primer. This is another type of primer. And the surfaces look a little different, don't they? This is a little shinier than this one, and maybe that's because this isn't necessarily matte. I don't know, but I did the same thing to both of these sets of bases, and they look a little weird. I wonder if this is going to translate, if this difference is going to translate to the flocking. Well, let's start gluing stuff, all right? Okay, so this is my wood glue test. Gonna try to mix these up, but I think I know which one's which. That's not the best start for science. So this is the wood glue that I had around the house. I used this for the construction of this little gaming hobby station. I think you've seen in some shots. I intended to do like a building clip, but I've already built it. So maybe I'll do a staining video. I don't know. It's actually a pretty nice little thing. Anyway, so I used this stuff to build it, and it hasn't fallen apart yet, but it's only been a couple of weeks, so maybe the day is young, as they say. So here's the wood glue I'm going to use, and so I'm going to do about that much. And if this was real science, like if this was chemistry, I'd be measuring this stuff out and whatever, but that's not the kind of science this is. This is crafting home science. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, I think that's less than half, like half and half ish. I'm gonna mix it in. So basically what I'm doing is I'm diluting the glue, and now I've got sticky fingers. All right, so this, as a matter of fact, I'm going to mark this brush off as my glue brush. So that I know not to use it for painting anymore. Although, it's probably going to be fine as long as I wash it, but you never know. So we'll do... And for all of these, I'm going to do a generous layer, bordering on the too much. I want to, I want to brute force this. All right, wash, wash, wash. And now, I'm just going to put these guys both in there. And dump a generous portion of flocking on that. All right, I'm going to let that chill for a while. And then I'm going to get rid of this. No, actually, no. This next one is what? Elmer's glue. I'll try to mix this up. Not that I don't already know which one's which. All right, and so I'm gonna do about that much. And so there was a surprising variety of Elmer's glue for me to pick. I picked this one because it's the school glue. It's the one that you're most likely to find like at a grocery store where you're kind of just in a rush. You're going to go buy something, anything. This is probably what you'll find. But I didn't, verify that. All right. There we go. Add some water. We'll go. Now, some people on those forums said, no, you don't even need water. Just go all the way. Just go all the way. Yeah. In case you don't know what that was, it was a song from when I was a kid. Don't ask me who did it, because I just don't know. Let's do a little tappity tap tap tap. Tap 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 tap. All right, this is the Elmer's glue. I'm going to use the same approach, just kind of loading it up nice and wet. Now I would take that, go to good old Duncan. Ah, no! Okay, that was our Elmer's glue. Put that away. Don't need that anymore. Clean these off, otherwise they get grosser than they have to be. You know what? I should have gotten a bowl for this too. Let's see, is this flocking glue. Flocking glue. Now, here's what I got. It's I think it's the store brand of the place I went to buy this. For all I know, this is exactly what this is, just diluted so you can spray it. I don't know. I don't know what it is. But we're going to test it out. This poor brush. It's seen so much. Okay. Wow, that looks different for sure. It has this bluish reflection. That is neat. All right, let me get this out of here. Do taps. Taps. Matter of fact, I want to start kind of mixing these up so I don't know which is which. When I score them, I can do so with some claim to impartiality. Oh, dunking time, isn't it? All right, now for the scary one. Honestly, they said super glue was the way to go. I don't believe the internet in this case, but I had this vision that the super glue was going to just destroy the flocking. But, hey man, this is science. I don't make the rules. I mean, I do in this case, because nobody's telling me what to do, but you know. Alright, so here's some glue there. Here's some super glue there. Spready, spready. Okay, and then spready, spready. Get this guy out of there. Tap, tap, tap. Tap, tap, tap. There and there. All right. We'll be back to assess these in just a sec. So, spreadability. Actually, for spreadability, I was expecting some more difficulty with this, and no matter what I used, whether it was the Elmer's glue, the super glue, really, I was surprised with how well the super glue went on. It felt fine. You know, putting it on the base, I didn't have any problems. Everything felt fine. So if I was going to score these, I'd give them all the same score. I mean, there may have been differences between a couple of them, but they were so similar they'd end up getting the score. They'd all get like the maximum score. So I'm not going to expect to see any differences as a result of spreadability. But maybe we can get something here for edge quality. So I'm going to strike this guy. Edge quality. And so we've got Citadel, Army Painter. All right. Now that you see me draw lines on a pad of paper, you may get a better appreciation for the quality of my painting. I cannot draw a straight line to save my life. Okay, well, let's give this a shot. So, edge quality. Oh, where's my cap? There's my cap. Edge quality. So, how sharp are these edges? Alright, so I'm just going to kind of rank them in order of straightness, maybe. Because that's where I see some variation. So the idea here is that I applied or attempted to apply the glue in straight paths, and to the extent that the line the line of flocking on this thing is straight, then I'm going to call it a better score. So here's how I've ranked them. So you can kind of see, so this first rank here, this is the best to least. And then it goes back over here to the second rank, all the way to the worst of the 8. So let's call these. So I have 8. You know what? Let's do this. So I initially selected the 1 through 5 grading scale because that's what, at my job, I do this sort of thing. Not this kind of sort of thing, but ranking and scoring and assigning values to stuff. At any rate, 1 to 5 is my default. We can do 1 through 8, where 8 is the best, is the value assigned to the best one, and we rank there. We rank from there on out. That way, I don't have to decide. Okay, do I award 2 5s? Do I award 4 5s? Like, how does that work, right? How do I give each one of these a 1 through 5 score? This way is easier. I just put these in rank order and treat the rank order as a score. Now, rank order and score doesn't always work out this way, but for our purposes here, it can absolutely do the job. So now I'm going to flip them over. And it's going to tell me what I'm looking at. That's quite a variation. That's not what I expected, but that's why we do this kind of blindly, right? We want to be as objective as we can be. So, I guess I should mention that. I use the words objective and subjective not arbitrarily, but the differences here might not seem as clear to someone who doesn't, who isn't as familiar with scientific, scientific measurement or psychological measurement. So there's a difference between subjectivity and objectivity. And rather than just define them, I'll explain what they mean to me. So, objectivity refers to the availability of the truth of the matter, right? I can verify the straightness of that line. I can verify objectively, I can measure the density of the flocking on the base, right? So if I wanted to measure the straightness of it, I can get a ruler and kind of, measure the distance from each edge. I can do some statistical calculations and figure out exactly how straight that line is, or how fuzzy that line is, and assign it a value. And that value will be true because it's essentially it's measured either by a machine or by some kind of method that limits the influence of human intervention. Like, I don't have to say, hey, this one is straighter than this one. It's the machine telling me. And then every time I put those same pieces through, the machine's going to tell me the exact same measurement, for the most part. So that's objectively. Subjective means that there's a human making the determination, right? So I could just say, nope, that's the straightest one. It looks completely straight to me. That one right there, that one's garbage. That one's crooked. It's basically an X. And it could very well be that that's how it looks like to me. But when someone else that isn't me makes those same determinations, these rank orders or those values I attach, these scores I attach, might be completely different. That's how I understand objectivity and subjectivity in an applied setting, like outside of the lab, at work, in life. And you can apply these principles, to not just your schooling. You can apply them at work. You can apply them in your own life. If you want to not have any friends, that's the best way to accomplish that, is to not only use principles of objectivity and subjectivity to judge things around you, but also telling people about that. Man, people love that kind of thing. Joking aside, when we, so I'm not using a machine to evaluate this. So by the very nature of me giving a score to these things with my human judgment. By its very nature, I am making a subjective judgment. All right, so there's very little that's objective about this, and that's okay. But what we can do is understand that there's a difference between objectivity and subjectivity, and in some cases, you can think of them as polar opposites, right? It's either one or the other. But in reality, that's not really the way it works. In reality, there's a gradient that goes from subjective to objective or objective to subjective. And the phenomenon that you're measuring, or specifically how you've measured that phenomenon, could lie anywhere along this continuum of objectivity or continuum of subjectivity, depending on how you want to frame this. So one way of assigning values is more objective than another. It is almost never completely objective. And I don't want to say that scoring mechanisms can never be truly completely subjective, because I think you could just do that. But it doesn't have to stay all the way subjective. You can do things to pull the measurement to the objectivity side. So here, what I've done is I've attempted to enumerate the basis for my assigning value, right? And I've blinded myself to the nature of what I'm testing, right? So I'm here, like for example, here I'm mixing them up, so I don't know who's who. So any bias that I have, like for some, let's say I'm a stockholder, I own shares of Elmer's glue. Whoever makes Elmer's glue, who is this? Doesn't matter. So let's just say I have stock in Elmer's glue, and I have billions of viewers, and so my goal is to sell as much Elmer's glue as possible to my viewers. I could say, hey man, I could either consciously or unconsciously, I can change these results because they're super important, right? I can change these results to lead us to a certain conclusion. So by blinding myself to that, to helping me avoid that kind of bias, I'm increasing the objectivity of my methodology here, as much as I can, right? It's never going to be truly objective unless I spend a lot of money on measurement, but this is good enough for our purposes. Yeah, that was a rant. So base adhesion. So how well did stuff glue to the base? I mean, I don't know how to make a determination now that I think about it. Am I getting anything coming off? All right, so here, so I've rubbed it, and I'm getting some to come off. I should probably be consistent with how I rub these. So I thought I had a good sense for what base adhesion and flock adhesion was going to be, and I'm not so sure anymore. So let's just call this adhesion. Yeah. Let's say adhesion. So for sure, let's do this as the worst. This is second worst. This is third worst. Fourth, fifth, sixth, 7, 8. So I think, to my eyes anyway, this is the best adhesion and then it kind of goes worse. And I just rubbed the flocking a couple of times. Now I should have let these dry for a good hour. In fact, probably overnight would have been better, but maybe that's a different test. Maybe I'll do a follow up. But let's find out where we are. So this is kind of just adhesion, just out of the gate. I let it dry for a little bit, and here's what I got. Again, those are way all over the place. All right, so overall look. Honestly, I'm trying not to memorize how these look. And so this is pretty subjective. I'm just trying to get a sense for which one looks better, right? Which one looks more like grass. And I suspect that the overall look and the adhesion are going to be very highly correlated. They're going to be basically the same kind of score. Basically, it's going to just look... It's probably just the density of the flocking in each of these. Yeah, so I can already tell the extremes, the best and the worst, are going to be the same as the other ones, but yeah, it's almost like density. I'm pretty sure this is going to be very similar to the last one we did, but it's not science without writing it down, right? So let's go through the process. Let's do the work. Now this is unexpected. At least by this judgment, it was almost in the order of super glue looked best, wood glue was second best, Elmer's glue was third best, and flocking glue was the worst. And then whether they were Citadel or Army Painter, it kind of flipped backwards and forwards. That was very interesting. I did not expect to see or even detect a pattern like that, but here we are. All right. Now, at the end of the day, this isn't science until there's a spreadsheet. Yes, we wrote stuff down, but that's the first rule of science. There is a corollary. The second rule of science, there must be a spreadsheet. Yeah, spreadsheet, maybe it's a database, whatever. There has to be data, and data are numbers. So, let's do some number crunching, shall we?
Okay, we're going to try this again. The first time I recorded this, the audio didn't work, so we're going to give this another shot. I have transferred all the data from the tablet I was scribbling stuff on, and I have it all here so you can see the numbers right there. And so I have numbers here for edge quality. I have numbers here for adhesion. You'll remember we kind of changed what that category was. And super glue, I'm sorry, the overall look. We have the overall, the scores there, and then I did an average of all three. I didn't weight the averages. I could have done that, but I just wanted to keep it pretty simple. So it was easily comprehensible. You'll also remember that we got rid of there was a second kind of adhesion. I think it was originally looking at how well the flocking adhered to the glue, and also how well the glue adhered to the base. And it didn't have a really good way of evaluating that. It was basically the same thing. So I just stuck with adhesion, and that's what you see here. Normally, if you're doing this kind of a science, if you're doing science, you don't usually change your measurement kind of in the middle of things. But then again, if you're doing actual science, you probably have some pre-testing, and so you can get rid of some of these kinks way before the actual trials. And so since this is just something I'm doing here at home, no research assistance, no lab assistance, we're just gonna kind of keep going with it. It gives us a decent sense of what's happening. So here's what I've got. So I created a line graph with each of these measurements. And so you'll see here that for edge quality, we have kind of two types of adhesive that are basically superior than the others, and at least at a more consistent basis. Now you'll notice that this gray line represents Elmer's glue. This one went from really bad under Citadel to really good in Army Painter, and I don't have a good way of understanding that. So that is what it is. And so I think for more reliable understanding of what's happening here, I think that the wood glue and the flocking glue give you reasonably better edge quality than the other two. The other two are kind of hit or miss. In the case of super glue, it's miss or miss. So there's that. And that probably has more to do with how I was able to spread them. You'll remember I didn't use a brush. I used a stick because I didn't want to just completely dissolve my brush. That fear may have been unfounded, since the flocking didn't dissolve into the super glue, which helps explain why a couple of people in the Reddits that I looked at for this were saying, hey, look, super glue works really well. I suspect that if super glue dissolved your flocking, they wouldn't be up there on Reddit saying, no, super glue is great. So there's that. For adhesion, this is our data, and it kind of switches over a bit. You'll notice super glue is still hanging out up here, kind of in the better of the bunch, but super glue now replaces wood glue that we had in edge quality. So super glue here in blue is kind of, better than average. If we leave 4 as our average, you'll see that wood glue does pretty well, and both of these seem to work better on Army Painter than on Citadel Color, but it's not a huge difference. But if you're looking for something that'll adhere to your stuff, then super glue, wood glue will both work better than Elmer's glue or flocking glue. Again, assuming my methodology isn't garbage, and that my my technique isn't garbage, and that all the confounds that were present didn't have an influence on here. So, this is data, but take it with a grain of salt. It uses scientific methodology, but it doesn't use, all the way, scientific methodology with, super precise measurement and all that kind of good stuff. It's good enough for use at home. Let's just say that. In terms of overall look, we have super glue kind of on top, giving us the most dense collections of the flocking. Second to that is the wood glue, and they seem to do their performance seems to diverge depending on whether it's Citadel color or Army color. But again, the differences aren't very big, so I wouldn't read too much into that. And in terms of flocking glue and Elmer's glue, they're both kind of inferior compared to super glue and wood glue. I'm not even sure I spelled overall correctly. I always think that overall has 2 L's, but I did a spell check. Don't judge my spelling. I know it's bad. Finally, overall results. So this is from these averages. So I took the average from here, and it gives us that. And so you'll see the calculation up here. So it's just an average. Again, not weighted. And what we'll see here is there's two adhesives that are a bit better than average, and there's two adhesives that are kind of below average, which, given how averages work, is exactly what one might expect, right? If we have four things, 50% of four is two, so two will be on top, two will be on bottom, and so the differences aren't really that major. But overall, it looks like flocking glue seems to do worse than the other adhesives, ironically because that's exactly what it's supposed to be doing. After that, we have Elmer's glue, which is probably the most recommended item on Reddit and a couple of other places that I was able to look. After that, we've got super glue and wood glue. So both of these seem to perform a bit better than the other two alternatives. It's an interesting set of results. I fully expected to just hate super glue with this, and I also had thought that since everyone, see, I mean, the vast majority of recommendations are go with Elmer's or PVA glue. The vast majority of those recommendations were that one. I would have expected it to perform better than it does. So it looks like wood glue or super glue are the ways to go. For my personal preferences, I'm not sure that I'm going to stop experimenting yet. There's lots of noise. The variations here aren't very big, so it might just be that I'll have to do something with a real life application. But at least we have some indication. We have some way of comparing them to each other, and that's better than nothing. How much better than nothing, that's open for debate. So wood glue, super glue, seems to be the way to go. Seems to be the way to go. It's late. Well, I hope this was helpful. I'm going to go back here. Just maybe I'll get a decent thumbnail out of this. I hope this was helpful. It was a little helpful for me. It kind of cleared up some doubts, particularly about super glue. And it kind of reaffirmed my decision to go with wood glue initially, even if it was just made as a decision of convenience. It looks like it does a better job than Elmer's or Army Painter. Of course, if this was real science, I would have done this several times to try to replicate and get an average of these scores. Ain't nobody got time for that. I hope you learned something. I hope you were at least a little entertained, or at least distracted, whatever the case may be. Thanks.
So just a brief item for your consideration. This wasn't part of the plan, but I did notice something weird as I attempted to salvage these bases. So the experiment was done. I had recorded myself delivering that nerdy speech about the results. You probably just saw that. That's kind of how I'm going to build it in the video. So I thought, all right, well, I'm done. I have these bases with half flocked. They're half flocked bases. So I'm going to try to kind of salvage these, right? Maybe I can reuse them for building or for later videos. And so I didn't expect to be able to salvage all of them, right? Because for some of them I used super glue, but I wasn't sure how clean the other ones were going to come out. And so there was actually a discernible pattern. So obviously you'll see the super glue. So these up here are super glue, and I'll confirm that here. That's Army Painter super glue. This is Citadel color super glue. So neither one of these two could I clean all the way. And as you know, I'm gonna yeah. So these are permanently bonded, as one might expect. So these are going to go in the trash. But interestingly enough, looking at these, I've made an observation, so I can tell what primer I used on each of these bases. I don't know what it is. I don't know how chemically different Army Painter and Citadel Color are, but I can tell these have like a flatter texture, and it just might be that this is flat black, and Chaos Black is not meant to be a flat primer or paint. That could be all of it. That's it. In fact, that's the simplest explanation is probably the best option, right? But I can tell these are all. Oh, huh? I got that wrong. So I got them grouped right. I just thought I got them flipped around. So this is Army Painter. That looks a little glossier than the Citadel. Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. So these are all Citadel. These are all Army Painter. I could tell that they're different. I just wasn't sure. I guess I was not clear on which was which. I don't know what that means, but they're clearly different. So they're not interchangeable in this respect. These two, I'm pretty confident. I'm sorry, these four. So these sets of two, I'm pretty confident I can reuse. They look really clean. They look really clean. I could. In fact, I probably don't even need to reprime them. I can just use them as is. And so these are salvaged, and these were wood glue and Elmer's glue. So these are cool. These can go back in my pile. These are not okay. You can kind of tell there's one side of this that's a little glossier. You can almost see there's a line there. So these have a thin film of that other glue. Look at this one. I think it's a little clearer here. This one has some flocking left. There's a little tinge of green there. And this is the flocking glue. And if you're wondering what I did to try to clean these off, just water and a stiff bristled brush. I brushed them for a little while, each of them under running water. Then I dried them off with just a kitchen towel, did some rubbing. And so I'm not sure if these are salvageable, but even under the most torturous test I could think of, right? Even if it was an accidental test, the super glue, man, it stuck around. It doesn't look good, but it stuck around. Maybe that's something you want for your models. Maybe it's not. But if you use whatever I use, this flocking glue, it's clearly not Elmer's glue, just diluted so you can spray it. It's something else. I don't know what it is, but it is something else. And these, I don't know. They may or may not be salvageable. I'm not going to take a risk of forgetting. I mean, there's little chance I'm going to forget that these are part of the test. But let's just play it safe and get rid of them. I have plenty of these bases anyway. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting. Accidental discovery. Best kinds of discovery. Other than the ones you wanted to happen. Anyway, that's it. Bye.